Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today I'm talking about the anatomy of weightlifting shoes. Now, I have filmed a similar video on this topic for cross-training shoes where I basically break down all of the construction elements that can influence a shoe's durability and performance. So similarly, I wanted to put together a video on weightlifting shoes that talk about elements that are worth considering before investing in your next pair of weightlifting shoes. These elements can influence a shoe's durability and performance, and they're just worth knowing, and I tried to keep it a little bit more concise and explain the rationale as to why it's important to understand what goes into a weightlifting shoe. I also have a written review on this topic. I'm gonna link that down there in the description, so check that out if you're interested for additional information. I also answered some common weightlifting shoe FAQs in that piece, but that all being said, let's go ahead and dive into the anatomy of weightlifting shoes. Weightlifting shoes, also referred to as squat shoes or lifting shoes, are a specific type of footwear designed to support lifting performance. Now, you'll most commonly see them used in the sport of weightlifting. However, you'll also see them used in strength sports like CrossFit, powerlifting, and strongman, depending on the event. Now, when it comes to recreational lifting, a lot of lifters will reach for weightlifting shoes to support their squat performance and be used for lower body accessory movements where specific adaptations are desired. In this video, I'm going to talk about 5 key construction elements of weightlifting shoes and how they can influence their performance and what you should look for. Now, some of these construction elements will be present across all shoes. However, I think the importance of those construction elements can ebb and flow based on a weightlifting shoe and how it can support your performance. So the first construction detail that I want to cover is the shoe's toe box. So with any performance-focused shoe, a toe box can be incredibly important. That is the space up here from the base of the forefoot to the end of the shoe, and it also includes the upper. So essentially, I like to think about it as being like this cube that pretty much encloses the toes. Now, why is this important for weightlifting shoes? So when we are snatching, clean and jerking, squatting, whatever it might be in your weightlifting shoes, a toe box that keeps your feet secure, but also that is wide enough to allow those toes to splay and stabilize can be really important. That's why I also think it's pretty counterproductive that a Nike Remalius 4 has this super narrow toe box. It kind of creates this like limiting factor in regard to how much you can splay those toes when training. So when looking into weightlifting shoes, looking for shoes with a toe box that either has an upper volume that can accommodate thicker feet or a width for wider feet can be really important for your training goals and overall comfort in those weightlifting shoes. The next construction detail that I want to cover is the shoe's outsole. So the outsole is this layer of material down here that protects and covers the bottom of the shoe. With any performance-focused shoe, similar to the toe box, an outsole can be incredibly important for performance and long-term durability of the shoe. Now, why is the outsole important to consider in your weightlifting shoe? So there are 3 key reasons why an outsole is important to look into before investing. Number 1 is for traction. So different outsoles will provide different levels of traction. Generally, I opt for full rubber outsoles that have deeper ridges or a slightly more aggressive rigid patterning because it will provide you more grip on different surfaces. So whether you're training on rubber gym floors, wooden platforms, or carpets, if you compete in powerlifting, this can be really important to consider. So if we look at something like the Reebok Legacy Lifter 2 and this Nordic lifting powerlifting shoe, the grip on the Nordic lifting shoe is meh. It's not really that great, and honestly, like I have to wipe this down pretty frequently, especially if there's dust on it, whereas in the Legacy Lifter 2, these deeper ridges actually provide a little bit more traction. The second reason why outsoles can be important to consider is they're going to provide additional stability. So most weightlifting shoe outsoles are designed to be relatively stable and hard in nature. So as opposed to your cross-training shoes outsole that is full rubber, this outsole is going to be a lot more firm, and that's going to be great for providing additional stability and support when you are lifting heavy. Some outsoles in weightlifting shoes don't provide the same level of stability though, like in this Nordic lifting model. It does compress a little bit, so that would be something to consider before investing based off of how heavy you plan to train in your shoes. The third reason is just the long-term durability. Generally speaking, you're going to want to look for outsoles that are, yes, full rubber in nature, but do provide a slightly more aggressive tread patterning. This will prevent the tread from fading out too fast. So if you are tackling a ton of volume in your weightlifting shoes, your outsole should last a little bit longer, which is great for prolonging your investment. The third construction detail that I want to cover is the shoe's midsole. So like the toe box and outsole that we've already covered, a midsole will also be important to consider in any performance-focused shoe. Now, as opposed to training shoes that have midsoles that extend all the way from the forefoot to the midfoot to the heel, In most weightlifting shoes, the midsole layer that you're going to want to look at and the materials used are going to run from the midfoot to the heel, because most weightlifting shoes will just use the thicker rubber outsole up here as the main base, whereas as you start to get into this elevated heel, you'll start to have more midsole material used. Now, when it comes to weightlifting shoes, there are a couple different materials that are commonly used to create the shoe's midsole. These materials include a TPU, which is this lightweight plastic used in Legacy Lifter 2 and the Romaleos 4. You also have like high density foams, which are used in this Nordic lifting model and something like the Adidas Powerlift 4. And then you'll also have stacked leather and wood, which are a little bit less common. Now, all of these materials will have different levels of durability and ground feedback. Now, generally speaking, I always suggest going for shoes with TPU heels. Now, obviously wood can be an awesome option, so can stacked leather, but with TPU, they'll usually last you a little bit longer and they are plenty stable for most lifters' needs. With something like the high density foam in this Nordic lifting model, you'll get a good amount of stability. However, this material can be a little bit more prone to breaking down faster. And if you're leaving these in like a very humid gym bag, then you could run into issues with this foam kind of breaking down and corroding over time. So when looking at a shoe's midsole, it can be really important to consider the level of stability you want and the durability, because that can then drive which models to go with and which will be better for your investment. The next construction detail that I want to discuss is the elevated heel that you're going to get in weightlifting shoes. So this is a feature that is pretty unique to weightlifting shoes, and it's going to bring your heel height higher than what you'll get in a training shoe, running shoe, and pretty much all shoes except for high heels, but I would suggest not lifting in those. Now, when it comes to the different levels of elevation you can expect in weightlifting shoes, it can range anywhere from like a ½ inch to even like 1.2 inches. So for example, in the Romaleos 4, you have a heel height of around 0.75 inches. In the Legacy Lifter 2, it's around like 0.82. And then the Nordic lifting, I believe it's over an inch, around like 1.2 inches. Now, how can this translate to performance and what should you go with? So that really depends. So when we are training on an elevated heel, we are putting our foot into a plantar flex position. This essentially means that our foot is in a position where the toes are down and the heel is sitting above the toes. Now, what does this mean for performance? Generally speaking, when we are training and our foot's already in a plantar flex position, when we go and do something like a squat, that's going to usually translate to allowing those knees to track further over the toes while maintaining a more upright torso position. This can be really important for sports like weightlifting, where you do need to have a slightly more upright torso for catching snatches and clean and jerks, or for squats if you're doing high bar squats where you want a slightly more upright torso. So one way to approach this topic when considering like how much heel height you need for your lifting is to consider how much support you need when it comes to your performance. So a higher heel height could be more beneficial for somebody who's a taller lifter, for example, with long femurs, long shins, that needs a little bit more assistance with their squat, especially when it comes to maintaining a more upright torso. A higher heel can also be beneficial for anybody who's really trying to bias the quads for any accessory movements, or even using your weightlifting shoes on a machine that doesn't really necessarily line up with your anatomy. A lower heel height can be a great option for anybody who's pretty mobile to begin with and just needs a little bit of support. There really isn't a one-size-fits-all heel height that works for everybody. Generally, most lifters will go around like 0.75, 0.8-ish inches, because that will usually translate well for most anatomies. But again, that's going to be individual. And so before investing in your first pair of weightlifting shoes, try doing some squats with a 2-pound plate, 5-pound, 10-pound plate under the heel. See what feels best, and then that can help drive which heel height might work best for you before you invest in a shoe that has a heel height that may not align perfectly with your anatomy and your training goals, wants, and needs. The final construction detail that I want to cover with weightlifting shoes is the additional midfoot support and security that you get with different models. Now, in most weightlifting shoes, you're going to have Velcro straps. You're either going to have a single strap system or a dual strap system. These help provide additional midfoot support. And so why is this important in the context of training? So when you're hitting deep squats, snatches, clean and jerks, and you're having those knees translate forward at a more aggressive rate, and you're lifting on an elevated heel, these straps can really help lock down that foot and create overall stability. For most lifters, I would not stress this detail too much, because most midfoot support systems will work really well for your training needs. Now, there are a couple occasions where different midfoot support systems can be a little bit more beneficial. For example, if you know you're prone to heel slip, or let's say you have a high arch, then you'll want to look for a shoe that has a beefier midfoot strap that can really lock down that foot and also has the length to accommodate your foot's anatomy and needs. But as a whole, this is a detail that I wouldn't stress too much, especially for beginners and more intermediate athletes and lifters, because most weightlifting shoe midfoot support systems will work very well for locking down your foot. Alright guys, that wraps up this video covering the anatomy of weightlifting shoes. I tried to keep this video pretty concise and just cover the nuts and bolts of weightlifting shoes to help you make better investments. Because weightlifting shoes can be a little bit more expensive in nature, I think it's really important to do a little bit of research to make sure you're investing in a model that's going to last you a while, but also fits your training wants and needs really well. If you have any additional questions on this video, hit me in the comments below or reach out to me personally. And as always guys, drop a like on the video, drop subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.